Let's give the Highland ROTC, led by Mr. Flores, a big hand. Good afternoon. On behalf of Principal Marco Harris, Athletic Director John Barnhill, the Highland Alumni Association, and the Highland Hall of Fame Committee, welcome to the inaugural Highland Hall of Fame Sports Induction Ceremony. I'm Ed Nunez from the class of 1980. I'm the committee chairperson of the Highland Hall of Fame Committee, and I have the honor of being your master of ceremonies this afternoon. Let's meet our committee members. From the class of 1962, Gary Spitzberg. From the class of 1974, Tim McCorkle. Coach Gary Sanchez, who coached track at Highland from 1977 to 2012 and coached football from 1990 to 2010. One of our committee members is not here yet, Curtis Spencer from the class of 1977. Marie Smith Everett, class of 1979. And Marlo Maxon from the class of 1985. Please give our committee members a round of applause for their hard work and dedication to your Highland Sports Hall of Fame. Would athletes and coaches here today, all former and current ones from Highland, please stand and be recognized. All former and current Highland athletes, please stand up. Wanted to make sure we honored all the former players, coaches, and administrators here at Highland. Highland Alumni Board was formed in 2020. The Highland Hall of Fame Committee was formed in 2022. There was those who thought Highland already had a Hall of Fame. Coach Gary Sanchez had put some names up on the board here in the gym. And I think many people felt that Highland already had a Hall of Fame. We realized immediately that when we formed this committee, we had a tall task in front of us going back 74 years. Highland, as we all know, has a very rich history of outstanding athletes, outstanding coaches. So we had a lot of work to do. We had to get our rules of order established, and that took time. We asked other schools for their criteria. We made it our own, and we made it Highland specific. We developed our purpose statement to preserve our athletic history. The Highland High School Sports Hall of Fame was founded in 2022. It was organized for the purpose of recognizing the outstanding athletic achievements by Highland High School alumni. It serves as a means of honoring and recognizing the athletes, teams, coaches, and staff who made significant contributions to the Hornet tradition of excellence. We sent out nominations earlier this year. We met in April, and we chose our first Highland Hall of Fame class. Highland athletics will not live on if we do not honor where we came from. The past creates the present. We feel that our first class reflects that. At this time, I'd like to invite committee member Marie Smith Everett to the podium to introduce our first inductee.
Welcome, everybody. I am very excited and super proud to introduce the first Highland Sports Hall of Fame inductee, Elvira Tiny Vidana. Taught at Highland from 1948 until retirement in 1980. She was beyond instrumental in promoting women's sports in the early years at Highland and New Mexico. She mentored so many of the student athletes to become physical education teachers and follow in her footsteps. She coached hockey, field hockey, basketball, and softball. Her teams were undefeated with the basketball team only losing one game. Tiny died peacefully on March 20th, 2008. I am proud to induct Elvira Tiny Vidana into the Highland Inaugural Sports Hall of Fame. Accepting her award is her dear friend, Sue Turner.
Thank you, Marie. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's absolutely an honor to see all of you inducted into the Highland High Sports Hall of Fame. the very first class of inaugural inductees. This is a great honor for me to speak about Tiny Vadano. She certainly deserves to be in the Highland High Sports Hall of Fame. I am from the class of 1963, where Tiny was the coach of all girls sports. However, as I told Mr. Nunes, I was not a student in any class of Tiny's. I was totally not athletic. My girlfriends and I took great pride to think of all sorts of excuses to not be in Tiny's class. You see, she was tough. She expected a lot from her female athletes. I could not, for love nor money, make a layup in basketball. You needed to do that in Tiny's class. I could make free throws, I could make 6-footers, but I could not make a layup. Go figure. Tiny would have said, just do it, try. I became acquainted with Tiny, however, years later on a personal basis when I signed up for Run for the Zoo. We had to pick up our packets with a t-shirt and a number for our entry the night before the run by 5 p.m. Well, I had to work late, so I couldn't pick my packet up. I had already paid the $10 fee, so I knew I would get the packet probably the next day. After work, I went to a dinner at a fellow entrant's home with several other friends. I mentioned that I hadn't picked up my packet, so I would pick it up before the run. Tiny overheard this and turned to me and without hesitation said, "You didn't? Well, then you can't run." With that tone in her voice, I was instantly back in high school, being a total failure of an athlete. I was feeling that scared all over again that I had not followed the rules. I then gathered myself and I said, well, I better get it. I paid for it. Tiny turned around and walked to the other side of the room. She always had a way of letting you know the rules and the consequences. One time in high school, Tiny was organizing a school GAA, Girls Athletic Association, trip to Alamogordo. I think that's where it was going. And she specifically told us which of the 3 buses we had to be on. And of course, all of the friends got split up. So we all just climbed on the same bus. She wouldn't notice, hopefully. We scurried to the back of the bus and held our breaths. I was terrified, and all my friends just kept telling me to not be a worrywart. Then Tiny appeared with her clipboard. She started checking off names that were supposed to be on that bus. Oh, don't be a worrywart. We just answered when there was a lull, or we kept very quiet. And when she got off the bus, we all sighed and laughed, extremely relieved. We just answered when there was a lull. When we got off the bus, we all sighed and laughed. I really think she knew we were on the wrong bus, but she probably knew we would have a good time. And the count was right anyway, because I think some others had the same idea to switch buses. If it hadn't been for Tiny, I don't think a lot of us girls would have been able to reap the benefits of team sports. Those of us who were not athletically inclined got to participate with one of the best coaches in athletics at that time, Tiny. She got us gym time in the big gym, and our own organization, Girls Athletic Association, and all the lessons playing on teams affords: goals, achievements, self-esteem, fitness, and friends. She confronted the school principal, male coaches, and I'm sure others to get the big gym. I bet she said, just do it. Let me have the gym a fair amount of time too. Lessons I learned from this coach ironically benefited me when I went to work for the telephone company and rose in the management ranks. I say ironically because in management we were always team building, and managers were identified as coaches, not leaders. Competition was a word often used by male managers more than female managers. Female managers always said there was no I in team, and therefore there was no internal competition, just the outside company competitors to worry about. And mechanization was a good thing, not to be feared with team building. Female managers were, in my opinion, not regarded with the same respect as the male managers, nor as they were in other industries. This is when some of the female managers got together and organized Women in Management for the telephone company in Albuquerque. We met, we promoted females, and we became very successful at coaching. That is, identifying goals, recruiting others, motivating work groups, and becoming very project-oriented. Hardly any women were selected as project managers before Women in Management. Oh my, Tiny was the influencer of the day. There were other times I came into activities where Tiny and some of the same acquaintances met. I was invited to a card group where there was Tiny. Well, good thing it was a fun group and the rules were only for cockamamie poker. It was great fun and the friends were fast. My fear of Tiny was over and I became to know her kindness. Her gruff manner melted with her smile. She loved dogs, mostly strays, odd activities like balloon fiesta and daffodil sales for muscular dystrophy, and ice cream. She really loved ice cream. And those lonely students from the edges of group activities. The Telephone Museum of New Mexico, she became a super dedicated volunteer at. She was always our crowd control official for all the APS students and for home school scholars. She was about the same height as a 10-year-old, and with her experience, she could spot the troublemaker and the leader every time. She would walk up beside them and in her deep voice, scare them straight. Never had tantrums or sad faces either. She was kind about it, so no student was ever embarrassed. Some of these friends over the years have passed away, and Tiny was there for them. And then we were there for her. When she was in hospice at the hospital on a ventilator, we read her cards from ex-students of hers and her friends from near and far. She was always saying she remembered them vividly. And you know what? She did. The chaplain from the hospice asked her, "What are your fondest memories in your life?" What would she be remembering when they gave her the shot to pass over the bar? And she thought for just a second, and then she said, it would be seeing the girls getting on the bus, pushing each other around and laughing and giggling as they climbed on the bus for the road trip. That was her fondest memory. She meant a lot to her students, and they meant a lot to her. She never really gave up. She just proceeded to the next step with great expectations. We will miss Tiny, and we have so far. We have a plaque at the museum, the Telephone Museum in New Mexico, and it says, Elvira M. Tiny Vedano, Highland High School phys ed teacher, 1948 to 1978, a big heart in a tiny stature. She gave many hours of hard work devoted to girls' athletics. She made a difference. She started GAA. She championed sports days to raise money statewide for girls' sports. 30 years of dedicated service to Highland High School, a true trailblazer for women. And it was posted in her memory. I don't know if I've run over 10 minutes yet, but there was a girl that was actually a student of Tiny's. Am I good on time or not? Anyway. And she emailed me a letter that I'd like to share with you. What a treat to go back the years I remember more fondly than these last few. When I think of my Highland years, really, Tiny Vidano stands out. At the time, I focused on my peers, but with my hindsight now being 2020, the brightest light is Tiny. In fact, I recently wrote her name so gratefully on a public art piece honoring influential teachers. It's not hard to understand. Tiny had activities I attended that brought on more conversations than just being in class. Fortunately, I was not B-booster material, so I chose GAA for my extracurricular activity, a most propitious crossroads for me. Tiny arranged for road trips to various sports days, Santa Fe School for the Deaf for volleyball, White Sands for softball, grants for track. We had practices for various sports every afternoon. And if you went to practice, you were on a team. And let me now reveal her philosophy of physical education, now lost to generations following us. PE was to give all kids life skills. Yes, life skills for more than an elite few. Sportsmanship, teamwork, sharing the glory of a win or a defeat, teaching, coaching, and encouraging using the skills you gained in class. Healthy minds and bodies developed from these life skills and habits of exercise. In her early career in Illinois, she organized a large intramural program with other schools. Each school would run tournaments of student-organized and student-coached teams. Then intra-school tournaments would be held. Real life initially guided by teachers to enhance their students' lives. Major population use of the gyms and equipment, scheduling and responsibility by kids, and no added expenses for uniforms and buses. Brilliant. I used this principle when I coached my own peers for City League volleyball and later my own classroom. Great memories. Furthermore, I wrote a letter to my child's school board hoping for a change. And on the bench were 23 players, but the coach usually fielded only 7 for a game. The remaining 16 kids got 60 plus seconds of play. But oh, they could work their hearts out in practice, very defeating motivationally. The constructive life lessons were sacrificed for fame and budget, and a coach's job was on the line. I passed on Tiny's wisdom and heard their surprised reactions, and they considered some changes. Of course, one can't change a whole city's sigh. Tiny once told me of life, all life is competitive. I thought a long while on that. In general, I believe that, but from my experience, I want to add to the current pride-filled connotation. Competition is to be challenging, causing one to stretch physically and mentally, and to use it to determine self-worth. To use it to determine self-worth is a misuse of a child's development. I don't remember that being the case with Tiny. I might self-deprecate. It's my guess she was objectively looking for improvement. Though I was not a star, Tiny accepted me and enlarged my experience in a competitive environment. I went to sports days competing on teams on my level. We lived in an era where varsity outcomes for girls and their coaches was non-existent, but it was on the horizon. I watched how a small person could draw a line in the sand and clearly communicate that serious consequences would follow. High and obtainable responsibilities for us were the norm. Tiny's boundaries were clear, but also inviting. The great number of girls that I met over the years, all appreciative of her, All loving her presence is testimony to a life intentionally well lived. We loved her smile, her greeting across a room, or even in a grocery store, her enthusiasm. We knew we were loved and accepted and valuable. These are the qualities we aspire to. Thanks for this opportunity, Susie. I have shed some tears and also relived happy moments. Marty Farmer.
That was awesome.
Let's get one more hand for Tiny Vidano. Our next inductee is Tommy McDonald. McDonald moved to Highland after his sophomore year at Roy. His athletic achievements at Highland in football, he scored 18 touchdowns as a junior and 25 as a senior. In basketball, he scored 596 points for the Hornet basketball team. In track, McDonald won 3 individual events, the 100 and 200-yard dashes, and the 180-yard low hurdles, and ran on 2 winning relay teams at the state meet in leading Highland to a state title. His clocking of 19.5 seconds in the 180 hurdles established a state record. He's a 2-time All-American from Oklahoma who played 12 seasons for 5 teams in the NFL and was a 6-time Pro Bowl selection. Philadelphia Eagles drafted McDonald in the 3rd round in 1957. He helped the Philadelphia Eagles win a championship in 1960. He was elected into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1960. Tommy passed away on September 18th, 2018 at the age of 84. His family is in Canton, Ohio this weekend celebrating Tommy at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Accepting the award for Tommy is his son, Chris, via video.
Hello and good afternoon to everyone. My name is Chris McDonald, and my father is the late Tommy McDonald. On behalf of my father, my sisters, and brother, I would like to extend a heartfelt thank you to the staff members, the voters, the personnel, and the committee members of the Highland High School Hall of Fame. It is with great pleasure to accept this recognition for my father, to be one of the first members of the inductee class into the Highland High School Hall of Fame. I know my father would not only be excited, but grateful to be part of your new Hall of Fame. As I grew up around the house and always hearing those endless stories of my father talking about his high school days and playing for the Highland Hornets, especially his sport days. He loved talking about football and basketball and track and all the fun he had with his teammates. I remember hearing the endless stories of Coach Hackett and how instrumental Coach Hackett was in my father's life. Coach Hackett and the Highland teams created key character elements for my father in his youth. Things like perseverance, the desire to excel, discipline, and dedication. One quick story I'd like to share with you for Highland High School is that they had just finished up their football season, had a great season. The Hornets won the state title. Dad made first team All-State and received various accolades. However, my dad was very small and was overlooked by just about every major college there was. His mother wanted him to go to Notre Dame and another big college, but all of them had overlooked him. He was playing for the basketball team that season, and one coach was coming through the University of Oklahoma and got stuck in Albuquerque that night. We all know the famous thunderstorms that can come through Albuquerque. Coach from Oklahoma had decided to go see the city basketball all-star game that night instead of sitting in his room. He went that night to the local gym. My father wound up winning MVP and scored somewhere in the vicinity of 30 points. He represented Highland High School that day, playing for the Hornets, and because of that simple fact, it caused that Oklahoma coach to call the head coach, Bud Wilkinson, in Oklahoma and tell him they needed to recruit the Highland High School Tommy McDonald for football. That simple fact paved the way for my father's life. He went on to Oklahoma to have a very successful career at the University of Oklahoma, playing for one of the greatest football NCAA teams there is. Two-time All-American, Maxwell Award winner, almost won the Heisman Trophy and was able to propel into the NFL. He wound up being recognized in the NFL for a very successful career, became a Trivial Pursuit question with his toughness at Highland High School by never wearing a face mask in the NFL. Finished second all-time in touchdowns, fourth all-time in career yardage, and went on to be inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame in 1998. So, no matter where my father was, where he traveled to, or where he ever thought of, he never forgot his roots for Albuquerque and Highland High. Every time he came and visited Albuquerque, he always made sure that he stopped by the high school. I would like to just say in closing that, again, to extend my thanks on behalf of my father, and please know that up there in the heavens, my father is smiling because he knows he will always remain in the hallways of Highland High with your new Hall of Fame. Thank you, and I wish you all well.
That's a great video tribute by Chris McDonald, and I got in dealing with the Highland Sports Hall of Fame, you get to talk to a lot of people, and Chris's memories of his father, well, here at Highland and in the NFL. I'm gonna have to call Chris for some more stories. So one more hand for Tommy McDonald. Our next inductee is Coach Hugh Hackett. In 9 years as the Highland football coach, his record was 62, 23, and 5. In 1954, his Hornets would go on to defeat the Artesia Bulldogs for the state championship. He would also coach 2 state runner-ups in 1956 and 1957. As a track and field coach, his teams won 7 consecutive state championships and put together an unbelievable 41 win streak. 1958, he became the head track and field coach at the University of New Mexico and would elevate the Lobos into national rankings, and he won 8 conference championships. 1967, he received National Coach of the Year honors, and in 1981, he was inducted into the Albuquerque Sports Hall of Fame. Hugh passed away on December 10th, 2010. Here to accept his induction into the Highland Sports Hall of Fame is his son, Pat.
Speak over, make sure you pull it. Yes, sir. Okay. There are some people that are a little mad over there. Do I need the mic? Yes. Does it matter if I need the mic?
Yes, you do. You do. Yes.
I do? All right. Okay. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody that put together this presentation. You people sitting here, people that are in the stands, thank you. This is the first time in a long time my brothers and sisters have been here that nobody died, so that's a good thing. The last time we were all together was at my dad's funeral. I did a lot of thinking about what I would say up here. There's my dad, is the most important position that he ever had was as a deacon. He was a prayerful man, and that was the example that he set for all of us. We all became prayer warriors. We like to pray. Anyway, I have some things here from his past. They're not going to mean anything to so many of you, but they did to me. He used to carry in his wallet scores, and they're still, remember, these are 75 years old, scores of football games, okay? Talk louder. Me, talk louder. You want me to talk louder. Okay, Belen versus Highland, 1952. Anybody want to guess the score? Art? 52-3. You were dang close. Raton, New Mexico. Raton. 42-0. Okay, you're going to love this one because this is where I ended up coaching myself. I followed my dad's footsteps. I went to El Paso. Thank God I wasn't coaching at this school. But in 1953, my father took the football team down to El Paso, Texas to play Thomas Jefferson High School. And does anybody know what the score was? 93-0. I was hired in another district. You guys like that, don't you? The Hornet Hive over there. There you go. Well, I could read others, but these were in his wallet, and I said, I'm going to go ahead and share it with you. And by the way, guess who I am up there? Which one? You see that little pouty face in the middle? That was me. Anyway, I drew up some acronyms for what Highland would stand for, what a Hornet would stand for. And don't get bored. You guys that were clapping, wait until I'm done. It'll just take a minute. H is for honesty. When this school started in 1949, teachers, principals, they didn't know what was going to happen. They were honest with their kids. The kids were asking my dad, are we going to win state? Not this year. Honesty, always, okay? That's part, and I hopefully you guys that are young there, you remember that. Honesty is important. O was for organization. You couldn't compete in a sport, you couldn't be a coach, an athlete, without organization. These athletes over here, are you guys this year's football team? Okay. How many hours you put in already, and school's only been 2 days? A lot of hours, a lot of time. Organization, okay? And that's what my dad kept these things in his wallet for, because he wanted to remember what it would be like when he got to the winning side. And in fact, I want to tell you, any track athletes in here besides Art? Matt Henry, where's Matt? There he is, another track athlete. When my dad's first track team went to state, guess how many points they scored, Matt? 2 points. Next year, they scored 4 points. The next 7 years, guess what? 7 straight state championships. Beautiful stuff. Okay, the R in Hornets stands for Renaissance. I love the idea that the new beginning, that's what Renaissance stands for, is a new birth, rebirth. This Hall of Fame is going to have these kids walking up into that Hall of Fame. They'll say, oh, I remember that old man. He brought this school to its prominence, and that's what Renaissance is all about. The N in Hornet stands for notorious. Athletes, coaches, Hall of Fame people. Notorious people. Where'd you go to school? I talked to what is your name? I'm kidding. Eddie Nunez, he called me last night and he says, I'm always a proud Hornet. I was like, and it sticks. You got to be proud. So notorious, your name, Highland. I went to Highland. The E stands for engaging. Anybody who participates in sports, anybody who is a coach, you got to be engaging, you got to be educational, you got to be a father figure, you got to love people. That was an example of everybody here. You people that are going to be growing up soon, you think I was this old one time, I was a coach too. And look at me, yesterday, and this is what happens. So don't forget where you started from. The T stands for tenacious. Tenacious is when you come to my house, when you come into Highland High School, this is our house. And tenacious, you better believe you're going to have something happen to you when you come in here. Right, guys? Tenacious. And then I went ahead and added the S to hornets for the swarm. Never letting up. How many have encountered a swarm of hornets? They bite you and bite you and bite you. That's what a swarm of athletic hornets will do. They'll bite you till you give up. So I appreciate everybody that listened to me. Thank you. Nobody clapped until I was done. Appreciate it. And I just want to emphasize one thing. Time is short. We thank you for honoring the athletes, the people, my father, and God bless you all for coming.
Yeah, let's give one more hand for Coach Hugh Hackett and a wonderful acceptance speech by his son, Pat. Coach Hackett was an incredible figure in Albuquerque and at the University of New Mexico, so we're certainly proud to have him as part of our inaugural class. Our next inductee is Art Garden-Schwartz. Art graduated from Highland in 1960. Art won state in the 440-yard dash and cross-country his senior year at a time of 48.1, a record that still technically stands. Art also won the Golden West Invitational in June of 1960 in California, the national high school meet for seniors. Art went on to the University of Arizona on a track scholarship. Art has also been a businessman in the Albuquerque area for many years. Art Garden-Schwartz is here to accept his induction to the Highland Sports Hall of Fame. Art, would you please come to the podium?
Well, thank you very, very much. I'm not quite sure as an athlete I belong together with most of these all-time greats, but nonetheless, I'm very honored to be included. So thank you very much to the hardworking committee. I was lucky to be at Highland during some of the golden years. It's no coincidence that I think 7 of these people that are inducted are coaches or athletic directors. And I was very fortunate to know most of them. Mickey Miller, Bill Gentry, and Tiny were definitely mentors. And I knew Bub Henry pretty well too, even though he was at a rival school. and he was great even later at UNM. But particularly I was fortunate my sophomore year to have Hugh Hackett, and then later, Henry Sanchez, which is, of course, Gary's father. So he was great my senior year. So I wouldn't have been success without their encouragement and coaching. It was really Hugh that got me started my sophomore year, and I really am very grateful for that. Looking back over the 63 years since I graduated, here are some of the takeaways that I think this experience at Highland contributed to the success in my life. First of all, I was a very bad stutterer in high school and even college. But starting to run and have success in athletics through these coaches made all the difference in my self-confidence. So I was later able to use that to further my career in different areas. I also remember too that in my junior year, the first year as Coach Sanchez, I was running the 880. I was like a minute and a half under the state record in the early meets, and I was favored to win state and set the state record. Well, guess what? I lost and came in second, and it was devastating. But the idea of learning from losing has been a great lesson in my life, because you have to look in the mirror and figure out what happened. And the next year, under Coach Sanchez, I was able to set the state record and go on to a successful career. But it took the idea of learning from your mistakes and recovery to achieve that situation. And from there, I came back to town later, working with my dad in H. Cook Sporting Goods, moved to Dallas, came back, and the successes I learned here at Highland have led to many great things in the community. And my wife, Sonia, spent a lot of time now in the real estate business and working in good causes and giving dollars back to the community for the things that we've received. I think, too, the other great lesson for me with athletics at Highland was in the health area. I started to be interested in good diet right in high school, and that led to following a doctor named Pritikin, who was one of the very first to talk about diet. So I learned fried food, sugar, and salt are bad for you. And I followed that regime ever since, which allows me at 81 to be in pretty good health. And I still am fortunate to hold 2 treadmill records for age groups at the Cooper Clinic in Dallas. And it was very fortunate in 1972 being in Dallas. I got involved with Cooper, and Ken Cooper was one of the 2 people that launched the fitness boom at that time. He termed aerobics as his term that he developed by studying people post-exercise of college and determined exercise is good for you. So, and then at the same time, 72, Frank Shorter winning the Olympic marathon launched the whole jogging boom. So that was a big benefit that I received living in that time and doing that. I still have enjoyed the running and fitness, and it's important to be in very good shape. I work out almost every day, and I still can hang with guys 15 years younger on the bike and the ski slopes. But that to me is a benefit of being here at Highland in those days. My 2 final points are that the work ethic that I learned from my coaches here at Highland and directing me in the right direction. I don't think teachers and coaches get enough credit for the success of their students and athletes, but I certainly give them credit here, and I'm for doing that, and I'm a product of that. I have 2 great women in my life. My mother, Shirley, was very encouraging and lived 102, and my wife, Sonia, who's here today, and these last 25 years, I wouldn't be standing here today and feeling as good as I am without her support and love. So thank you, dear. And so I'm very flattered to be here and accept this award, and hopefully we'll have some more awards coming up in the future years, and I'll be back to join you. Thanks again to the committee.
Let's have one more hand for Art Gardenschwartz. Our next inductee is Coach Mickey Miller. Coach Miller's coaching career began in 1949 at Highland when Highland opened its doors. He served as the Hornets' head basketball and head baseball coach, was the defensive coach in football, and director of the school's athletic and physical education department, stepping down in 1964. He became an assistant principal at Highland until 1970. During Coach Miller's career as a coach, the Hornets basketball team had a 334 and 113 1-loss record and went to state 14 times. Baseball teams were 249 and 102 with state titles in 1951 and 1959. Coach Miller was named New Mexico High School Coach of the Year in 1954 and was elected to the New Mexico Coaches Association Hall of Fame in 1981. He was also elected to the New Mexico Sports Hall of Fame in 1994. Coach Miller passed away in April of 2003. Coach Miller is represented by his daughter, Lynn Carson, who will accept his induction into the Highland Sports Hall of Fame. Lynn, would you please come to the podium?
Good afternoon. I want to thank the committee for this honor. It is a great honor to represent my family here today. My name is Lynn Miller Carson, but really my name is Mickey Lynn Miller Carson. I was named for my father. I graduated from Highland in '71. I have two sisters. One graduated in '70 and the other graduated in '67. We're going to have a short quiz now, really short, not important, but short. In what year was Highland School Facility designed? Anybody? The facility, when was it designed? When did it go on paper to be designed? Not built, designed. 1947. Do you know how much the classrooms cost back then? Anybody want to take a wild guess? It costs $601,000 to build that building over there. Anybody want to take a guess about how much the gym cost? Anybody? $695,000 in 1947 prices. Okay? And once, a long time ago, it was designated to be a bomb shelter, just in case. Does anybody know why Highland's colors are blue and gold? The Hornet was named for the carrier, but my dad and your dad were in the Navy, and so the colors blue and gold were chosen. All right, this is the hardest question here. Everybody knows the Highland High School mascot is the Hornet. Everybody knows that. Do you know he has a first name? All right, okay. That was, okay. APS, aside from the charter schools, APS has 12 regular high schools. Based on the years they were built, what number is Highland out of the 12? Say it again. 2, right on, okay. Now I'm going to get to some stories about my dad. Some people will know these. My sisters and I grew up in this gymnasium. Every weekend, some sport was being practiced, and our dad brought us with him to those practices, poor dad. We knew every sound a basketball made, every space, every stairway. We bounced on trampolines, we used crayons to color in our books, and we sat up in the bleachers that used to be flush against the wall. One Christmas, our parents told us they didn't have money for a Christmas tree. So we went to bed very sad. The next morning, a huge Christmas tree had appeared on our front porch. It was so big, Dad had to use a saw to cut it so it would fit in the house. We later found out that Dad's letterman had requisitioned the tree, and they did it out of love and respect for Dad. Dad was also very proud of his grass at the house. It was African Buna. It was green, spongy, soft. It was tough, and it was drought resistant. He took runners from our lawn and planted them in the baseball field. He watered and weeded by hand. It was the first grass baseball field. Dad also had to prepare and mark the lines on that field. And one time he was using powdered white lime. and the wind blew up and put it in his eyes, and he was partially blinded, had to wear an eye patch. In 1970, he went to be the athletic director for APS. He scheduled all sports, games, times, places, buses. He hired coaches, referees, athletic trainers, and other personnel. His was the last word for any challenges from within APS and answered any challenges from around the state. Albuquerque was much smaller then, and Dad seemed to know everybody in town. He managed to use those connections to obtain sports gear, food, transportation, and other in-kind services for sports programs. No one ever said no to my dad. Dad believed that athletics was a reward for being a successful student and insisted on classroom performance first. In his own life, he considered athletics to be his ticket to an education. For APS athletic director, he implemented the advent of women's sports in Title IX. He encouraged inclusion for all athletes in an environment of expanding sports programs. Dad was supposed to play pro football, but World War II interrupted that. So he played for the Navy Bainbridge, Maryland team. And the Army played the Navy played the Marines, and everybody was there. And Dad played center. He was also a pro scout for the Pittsburgh Pirates, and he went all around APS and the state, and he scouted, and he sent those stats in. On the national level, Dad was honored multiple times for being an innovative leader and professional. He held top leadership position in the American Alliance of Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance. As you can now tell, our dad was a very special, talented, and dedicated individual. Thank you for this special recognition from Highland. Our father would be pleased.
Let's have one more hand for Coach Mickey Miller. You know, I got a little story. I was talking to Coach Holzman, and I had asked Coach Holzman to be here, but you know, he's slowing down a little bit, and he said he couldn't come. He wanted to be here. He sends everybody his regards, but he was here coaching baseball and basketball here, and I think a lot of people might forget that. But he said that Coach Miller would tell him, "Well, you go start baseball while I finish basketball," and then Coach Miller would come. And then he'd tell Coach Holzman, "What the heck have you been doing? These guys can't play any ball." So that was kind of a funny story that Coach Holzman remembered about Coach Miller. We're going to move on to our next inductee. It's Lloyd McPeters. Lloyd graduated in 1965. He earned 3 football letters, 2 basketball letters, and 2 track letters during his 3 years at Highland. He started as a defensive cornerback on the 1963 Highland team that beat Las Cruces for the New Mexico State Football Championship. He was also selected to the Coach and Athlete Magazine 1964 National Prep All-American Football Squad honorable mention. Selected to the North-South All-Star Football Game in 1965. He was the starting point guard his junior and senior seasons here for the Highland basketball team. In the spring of 1965, he placed 4th in the New Mexico State Track Championship for the javelin. He received a full athletic football scholarship to go to Oklahoma State. McPeters started officiating football in 1972. He was selected to officiate in the RMAC and WAC from 1978 to 1992. In 1993, he became the first New Mexico official to officiate in the NFL. He retired from officiating in 2009. Lloyd is here to accept his induction into the Highland Sports Hall of Fame. Lloyd, would you please come to the podium? Those are hard for healthy people, man, I'm telling you.
Hello out there. First of all, I'd like to thank the committee for my selection to this. I'm humbled and I'm honored. Secondly, to the other inductees as well as their representatives, congratulations. This week I received several congratulations from the class of '65, which I see several of them back there. I appreciate you being here today. It means a lot to me. Thank you for coming. And speaking of the class of '65, you know, we had over 830 graduates in our class. Now, even though we were a large class, we were orderly and we were polite. Mike, Phil, do you ever remember in any of your classes that any of our classmates were asked to turn off our cell phones by our teachers? No, not at all. Exactly. I was blessed to have a mother and father who loved me and encouraged me to be a responsible student athlete. In addition to Highland, I was fortunate to be coached by 3 coaches who are inducted here today. From those coaches, I obtained some of their coaching philosophies and concepts, which I applied to my 45 years as an employee benefit broker, as well as 38 years as a high school, college, and NFL official. Coach Gentry always said, "You gotta want it." He instilled a work ethic in his team and players that enabled them to achieve it. This work ethic consisted of commitment, discipline, preparation, detail, and teamwork. I applied this work ethic to my officiating and my employee benefit career, and I attribute the success in both of those as a result of that. Thank you, Coach Gentry. I was Mickey Miller's point guard his last season, my junior year. At timeouts during the course of the game, one of the last things that Mickey would always say, "Stay the course, run the play, don't deviate. If you do, you're going to run the risk of beating yourself." For 45 years as an employee benefit broker, I developed some successful marketing niches, but from time to time, sales managers or other brokers would recommend that I leave those and go elsewhere. But I'd always remember Mickey saying, Coach Miller, saying, "Stay the course, do what's successful, don't deviate." And as a result of that, I didn't chase everything over the map. I stayed with what was successful for me, and I attribute my success in the benefits to him. Thank you, Coach Miller. By the time I got to track, I had completed a football and a basketball season. I was way behind my competition in the javelin event. In my senior year, there were some good throwers. But I remember Coach Sanchez pulling me aside and saying, "Be patient. Don't look ahead. Just work on your footwork, work on your throwing technique. Your goal is to improve each week, qualify for state, throw your best, and maybe you'll place and earn some points for the team." Well, I qualified for state. I came in 4th. My throw was 12 feet further than my previous best, and I earned some points for the Hornets. For 13 years, I officiated football at the collegiate level. In doing that, the last 8 years, I'd receive a letter from the NFL asking me to send them my officiating schedule. I do that faithfully, and when I send it off, I'd remember Coach Sanchez saying to me, be patient, don't look ahead, work on your footwork, work on your technique. What that translated to was I needed to continue to improve on my collegiate officiating mechanics, my collegiate officiating rules knowledge, and my overall conditioning. Well, what do you know? 1993, I got a call, and I was asked to join the officiating staff, and for the next 17 years, work at the highest level of football. Thank you, Coach Sanchez. While I was at Highland my junior and senior year, I dated Mary Barron. And she was quite cute, I might add. After we graduated, even though we went to different universities, we continued with our relationship and dated during the summer. After we graduated from college, I married the love of my life, and I've got a great teammate. She supported me and encouraged me when I was balancing between my employee benefits career and my officiating dreams. But most importantly, early in our marriage, she showed me how I could have a personal relationship with God through Jesus Christ. Lord willing, in 11 days, Mary and I will celebrate our 54th wedding anniversary. Thank you, Mary. We're blessed to have one child, a daughter, Katie. She's here today from Phoenix. What was neat to see with Katie follow her mother's action of being a great teammate. And what she did, she took that baton, just like we passed the baton in track, and took that and brought that to her own family of her husband Shane and her 4 sons, demonstrating the importance of teamwork and being a good teammate. Thank you, Katie McPeters Stevens. Now, when people find out I officiated football for 38 years, one of the most common questions they'll ask me, in addition to, who's your favorite team? Duh. It'll be, is there a success formula? I found that whether I was a player or an official, in order to be successful, it required a certain process. You had to have preparation, you had to execute, and you had to evaluate. Then people would ask me, well, what's the most important one of those 3? And I said, that's easy. As Coach Gentry would say, if you have poor preparation, you got piss poor performance. Then they say, well, what else? And I go, well, let me tell you a story that, in closing, that I think demonstrates the importance of performance and preparation for a player and his team. This is a true story. This is about a football game in southeastern New Mexico between the big animals and little animals. And it was 49-0 at halftime in favor of the big animals. And to make it worse, the little animals had to kick off. Well, the water buffalo gets the ball, it gets to the end zone, 5, 10, 15, 20, bam, tackle on the 20-yard line. The little linebacker squirrel says, who did that? Centipede says, I did that. Nice job. 1st and 10 from the 20. The giraffe quarterback drops back, tries to throw a screen pass to the kangaroo. The kangaroo leaps up. All of a sudden, he's knocked down. Incomplete pass. The little linebacker squirrel says, who did that? Centipede says, I did that. Good read. Second and 10 from the 20. The gorilla tries to roll around right in. He's met head on at the 20-yard line. No gain. The little linebacker squirrel says, "Who did that?" Centipede says, "I did that." Good read, good containment. Little linebacker squirrel starts to go back to his position, and he turns and he says, "Hey, Centipede." Centipede says, "Yo." Little squirrel says, "Where in the heck were you in the first half when we needed you?" Centipede said, "Oh, I had to get my ankles taped." Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me get to you, Bob.
Good job, Lloyd. Congratulations, Lloyd. We have one more hand for Lloyd McPeters. Our next inductee is Coach Carl Bill Gentry. Coach Gentry coached football at Highland from 1958 to 1989. His football record at Highland was 245 wins and 82 losses with 5 ties. His teams won 14 district titles, played in 6 quarterfinal games, and won 3 state championships. Coach Gentry perfected the Delaware wing T offense in New Mexico, using it with great success to become the first New Mexico high school football coach to win over 300 games. He became known as the Dean of High School Football in New Mexico and was inducted in the National Football Hall of Fame in 1994 and was also inducted into the New Mexico Sports Hall of Fame in 1987. Coach Gentry passed away on June 20th, 2021. He is represented here today by his son Tom from the class of 1980, who had the honor of playing quarterback for his dad. Tom will accept induction on his father's behalf into the Highland Sports Hall of Fame. Tom, would you please come to the podium?
Thank you very much, Ed, for that great introduction. And my brother Bill and sister Marcy and our family is here today. And we'd like to thank you guys so much for thanking my dad and the Sports Hall of Fame here at Highland, especially the very first class. It's quite the honor, of course, and we thank you so very much. Wow, what a excellent group of people just from the 50s that, you know, the famous coaches and athletes. And wow, Highland got off to quite the start. You know, most schools when they begin, it takes a while to kind of get going, but Highland achieved that excellence. I think the administration, faculty, coaches, athletes really from the beginning. So the 50s really kind of set the pace for a great school. It's still a great school to this day. And when Coach Hackett took the job at UNM, football job opens up, and you know my dad, he was great with the stories. He was great, always giving tidbits of his life and the stories. And he would talk about getting the job, the head football coach at Highland High School in 1958, and he was a junior high PE coach and teacher. And I think the general census was, who's this Bill Gentry guy? What's, why are they hiring? Who's Bill Gentry? Who's this guy? And as my dad tells the story, he kind of got off to a bit of a slow start. I think the record win and loss was not bad, but it wasn't that level of excellence that I think the Highland community was really used to. And so off to a bit of a rocky start. And he also talked about wanting to be kind of a reserved coach. He didn't want to be, the yelling, screaming, tough guy. He wanted to not quite do that. And he kind of realized after a couple of years that wasn't working for him so he decided that he needed to get tough. And so the tough Bill Gentry was born at that point. And I don't know, many of us in this room that played for him realized that he could be kind of tough. He was kind of a tough guy to play for. And so that's an understatement. But he had really his style of coaching, I think a lot of folks that didn't play for him or weren't around him, he had that tough demeanor. And in practice, as we all know, he demanded 120 minutes of your attention, focus, and no mistakes. And he was great at being able to find that one person that wasn't paying attention, not doing their job, and he would home in on that, and you were in trouble. And he would get on you, and it felt bad. It wasn't comfortable, and you were seething, and you were mad. But then 2 minutes later, he could say something or do something, and you were doubled over in laughter, tears crying from laughing so hard the whole team's breaking up. So he had that ability to really balance. He was a tough man, tough to play for, but he also had that light and humorous side that was a lot of fun as well. So after those first few years, the 60s came around, and he really the Highland football program really took off under his coaching. Won a couple of state championships, and as a young man, young family, and I think we could talk about the various decades that he coached. He coached in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. But I think from hearing him talk and tell stories through the years, I really think that decade of the 60s was very special to him. I think a lot of the players, coaches and so forth, I think that was kind of the era that he kind of found his way as a coach, found success. And there was a lot of great men that played for him in those days that thankfully still or kept in touch with him throughout his entire life. And our family, thanks to you guys know who you are, and that was very special to him to keep in touch with those guys through the years. And I also remember that my mom and dad ended up with some very good friends, lifelong friends, who were parents of some of the young men that played for him in the 60s mostly, some into the early 70s, but in the 60s. And I always thought that was pretty remarkable that these parents have a son that goes and plays for the mean Bill Gentry, and he's saying things to him at practice that are not very nice and yelling at him, and yet they knew that, they accepted that, and that's what they wanted their sons to go through. And that was what football was about. Football is, of course, a contact sport. It's a sport of aggression. But I thought that was pretty remarkable that those folks would, befriend my parents and have lifelong friendships after that. So that was, again, something that kind of was born of the 1960s era. But just overall, Highland High School, the greatness of the 50s, my dad's era as football coach here, and he poured his heart and soul into the school. He was here probably 12 hours a day, year-round. He loved the place. The place became part of him. And the nice thing is that after he left, that baton was passed on to other football coaches that did a great job. The Mark Henry, Gary Sanchez, Judge Chavis, and others that continued that Highland Hornet football tradition, through the generations after my dad left. And there's something special about that. And the last couple of years, we've played in this Bill Gentry Memorial Golf Tournament, and you show up in the parking lot, and the Hornet football team is there to get your bag and put it on the cart, and you can tell right away they're Hornets. They have a good demeanor about them. They're cordial. They're good young men, and so I commend Coach Lovato for carrying that tradition to this day. So that's a fantastic thing. So when you talk about the Hall of Fames and you're talking about these great coaches and great athletes, and my dad was certainly a great coach, and the focus tends to be on those individuals, which it should, but really I think you have to think about the fact that Highland High School, I think, kind of made Bill Gentry. It was here before he came along, and it was here after he left, and I think Highland, made Bill Gentry into what he was. So go Hornets.
Let's give one more hand for Coach Carl Bill Gentry. Would Marie Smith Everett please come back to the podium to introduce our next inductee?
Well, our next inductee, wow, I'm excited for it. It is Kathy Carr West. She graduated in 1972. As you can see, there's not very many women in our inductee class for the first class because Title IX was not signed into law until June 23rd, 1972. So Kathy swam her way into the record books with a state championship performance in the 100-meter breaststroke and the 200-meter individual medley. She followed that up in 1972 in Olympic gold and 2 world records. And the neatest award, I believe, is she was awarded the first female athletic scholarship to the University of New Mexico after Title IX was passed. And I think that's pretty cool because several years later, my daughter got one in track and field and cross country, so it's pretty cool, you know, that she started that out for us. I'm very proud to induct Kathy Carr West into the Highland Inaugural Sports Hall of Fame. Kathy was not able to be here, but please turn your attention to the video for her acceptance speech.
Hello to my fellow Highland Hornets. It's a great thing for us to have in common. I'm from a family with 7 kids, and 6 of us graduated from Highland, so we definitely have it in our blood. I feel very honored to be a part of this inaugural class for Highland Sports Hall of Fame, and there's all these incredible people alongside me, so thank you very much. I was always proud to be from Albuquerque, from Highland, and from New Mexico. These are my roots, and I took that pride all the way to the Olympic Games in Munich in 1972. For my sports successes, I had so much support from my family, from my teammates, from coaches, from the Highland community, teachers here, all my friends here, and then from the Albuquerque swim community. So that was amazing. My swimming started a little inauspiciously. I took lessons when I was 9 and did the swimming team when I was 10, but took a little break until I was 12 and 13, and some of my friends joined, and then it made it a bit more fun, and I started swimming much more seriously. Many people think Olympians just start in their field and they're great, but that wasn't the case for me. I had to work hard, and I had to move up the ladder, you know, move through the ranks. And one of the great things about swimming is that you're racing the clock. And so even though I'm a very competitive person, there was always the perspective of, oh, your times are improving, so, you know, keep at it. And I think that was helpful for me. As time went, I made my first national cuts, and when I went to my first nationals, I actually was last in one of my races and then in the middle of the pack. I had been so awestruck by the people there and kind of lost my head a little bit, and so I took a lot away from that meet in terms of keep working hard. I think you can belong there. So it gave me some confidences that I could do it. And in subsequent nationals, I improved a little bit each time until the summer before Olympic trials, I had 2 fourths, and I made 3 different Olympic qualifying times. So I was set to go. I was starting at Highland, and one of the great people I met in the beginning was Tiny Vadano. She became an incredible mentor to me, and one of the biggest lessons I learned from her was the importance of what was happening with girls' sports in high school at that time. And she could sense that things were changing, that this was a big time. And so I participated in Girls Athletic Association in several different sports, and loved it, had some great friends in that. And I also was on the Highland girls swimming team for 2 years. The inaugural year was my junior year. So I felt like I was also in the middle of something so important that was happening in girls sports. And I feel so proud of that when I talk to people about it today even. Another interesting thing, or very impressionable thing that Tiny did for me, was my senior year. She met with Dr. Wright, the principal, and at the swimming coach at University of New Mexico men's team, and she helped to get a schedule organized for me that would allow me to take PE the first period, but actually to be swimming and training with the men's team. I don't think she had it approved or talked about it with APS or the district office, but Tiny, she got it done. And it made a huge difference for me because it helped move me to the next level in my sport of swimming. I had several other great mentors at Highland. The Figge brothers, they were also always very encouraging and wanting to know how things were going. And then Miss Ingerly, who was my chemistry teacher, who was trying to push me a bit into a female in science, which I appreciated. The one thing that they all did is they treated me normally in terms of they still demanded that I kept a high standard in my academic pursuits. And my friends were the same at Highland. I'd known some of them since elementary school, and they all treated me normally. And after all, I felt like a normal person, or a normal high school person. And I was just able to do something that was extraordinary. So that was a good thing for me to keep in mind. Then during that summer, the Olympic trials came up, and my first event that I swam, I was on my last lap, and I could hear the announcer on the underwater speaker saying, "Kathy Carr's on world record pace." And I was going, "What? I can't swim that fast." And so I lost my stroke a bit, lost my focus a bit. And long story short, when I touched the wall, I missed out on making the Olympic team in that event by 4 100ths and by 2 100ths. And so that could have been devastating, but actually it was a big confidence booster, because I don't think until that point did I really believe that I could make the team. And 2 days later, in fact, yes, I made the team in the 100 breaststroke, and it was just a crazy time. Following your goals and trying to hit your goals and moving to the next level, and then believing that you're there, are two very different things. I remember taking the picture of everyone that was on the Olympic team, and I was thinking, whoa, I'm a part of this. I'm on the Olympic team, but it's hard to soak in. And then we go to training camp, and I'm training alongside all these people that were idols of mine for years, and they're friends of mine. And so I'm trying to believe it a little more. And then we get all of our USA gear, and oh, I've got all the same uniforms as everyone. Come on, Kathy, believe you're on the Olympic team. And then we had lunch at the White House with the president and headed to Munich. Getting to the Olympic Village, walking around in there was incredible. You meet athletes from all over the world. You're exchanging pins, communicating with them, and it's just an amazing feel of what's going on in the world. It was a great thing for my young self. And then the opening ceremonies, I think that's when I first started believing, oh, you know what? I'm an Olympian. Because you walk into the stadium and it's overwhelming with noise and people, and even today when I'm watching the opening ceremonies, I get chills, because that was an incredible moment in time to be a part of. So then a couple days later, I start my events, and my schedule seems a little more normal because I'm swimming. The 100 breaststroke, I qualified for in the trials and in the semis first, and then when I finished, I had swum so fast. It had felt amazingly light in the water, and I had swum about 3.5 seconds faster than my best time. So that was amazing. It was a new world record, and I won the gold medal. And that was crazy. And then 2 days later, I had the opportunity to swim the 400 medley relay with my teammates. We also set a world record and won the gold medal. So that was just crazy. The Olympics were a little bit late that year. They were in September, and so I missed my opportunity to start college. Oh, darn, right? But anyway, so I worked a little bit, and then I started UNM in January, and I was actually awarded the first female athletic scholarship at UNM. So that was then and today maybe even more special, because you think of the growth there's been in girls and women's sports, and I was just right on the forefront of that. So that was amazing. My two daughters both received Division I athletic scholarships, and I know they had so many opportunities and uniforms and that I didn't have, but they also had pressures that I didn't have. So, you know, there's an interesting balance in that whole thing. Anyway, so that's a bit about my sports journey and my time during the Highland years and the Olympic Games. I still feel like some of that was a dream, but it was a good one. Thank you.
Let's have one more hand for Kathy Carr-West. Some great pictures that people sent to Marie Smith Everett. She did a great job of getting them together, and David Montez and the people here at Highland, the video people, have done a great job. I want to give them a big shout out. Our next inductee is Coach Henry Sanchez. Coach Sanchez coached track and cross country here at Highland from 1959 to 1983. As a head track coach, he won 10 state track championships and 3 state titles in cross country for a total of 13 championships overall, the most by any Highland coach ever. During that time, he had 131 athletes receive the gold medal at state. In 1983, Sanchez was named the National High School Coach of the Year for the NFH SCA. Coach Sanchez was inducted into the New Mexico Sports Hall of Fame in 2013 and passed away in February 2018. Hall of Fame committee member Gary Sanchez will now accept induction into the Highland Sports Hall of Fame on his father's behalf. Gary?
Hey, it's great to be here back at Highland. I love this gym. Ms. Carson, Gentry Brothers, remember how much fun it was. We got to grow up here, just like you said. We'd hang out here. We'd see many of you all. Now, we were young kids, and we would see you in your athletic endeavors. But let me tell you a little bit about my dad, all right? Born in Lincoln County, Lincoln, New Mexico, went to high school at Capitan. He played all sports there. He was on a state basketball championship team there. After high school, during World War II, he joined the Merchant Marines and also the Coast Guard, where he finished up his career of service. Came back to New Mexico, needed something to do, used a GI Bill to go to college at Highlands University, where he played football, basketball, and baseball. During that time, in 1941, he was an all-conference tight end. This is where he met the love of his life, my mom, who is still alive. She just turned 96, July 15th, and couldn't make it here. My sisters are with her. I asked them, what do you want me to say? Just say, hey, we miss you. My oldest sister said, hey, just let him know the kind of man he was. Coach, patient, and loving. Well, after that, after the graduation and marriage, he went on to coach. He had his first job was in 1953. He was hired at Berlin. as elementary PE and a coach. Getting ready to start that year, there was another pandemic going through the United States, which was polio. And right before he started his coaching career, he contracted bubonic polio. I went through a recovery process, couldn't coach. He was out of work for a while. He took some odd jobs until the following summer, he was hired at Emerson Elementary for 2 years. Then moved on to Wilson Junior High, all feeders to Highland High School. All right? He was also a city championship coach at Wilson. And then, of course, after Coach Hugh Hackett got the job at the University of New Mexico, one of the ones that led the way here, him and Mickey, Tiny. Him and Bill Gentry got the job in 1959. Bill football, and of course, my dad in track. And their careers just expanded from there. One of the things that I want to go over is just some of the things that he accomplished. In that time of 26 years, he had 229 total wins. 156 of those were dual track meets. You know, it's our school against yours. Sometimes they would kind of put them together, but he had 156 wins. 48 invitationals, where over 10 to 20 teams that he won. 15 district titles, and amazingly 10 state titles in track and field with 3 in cross country. Now, that's a great record, and there were also, if he didn't win, or it wasn't he, and he'll tell you that, but if his teams didn't win, they were finishing second, third, they were always in the top. He had an illustrious career there. In 1983, he was National Track Coach of the Year. All right? He will never say, they'll ask him, who was your favorite team? Who was your favorite athlete? Well, his favorite athletes were Hornets. He loved it. He loved being at Highland High School. He would always say, you know, the administration was good, I had the great kids, and I had great support from the parents. And he truly meant that. And you all, he didn't coach Tommy McDonald, and he didn't coach Bobby Newcomb or Jared, who are soon on here. But the rest of you, he had a part of, all right? And he loved his athletes. He loved Highland High School. You know, all of you that are getting your awards, he thanks you. He really does, to the bottom of his heart. He worked hard. He prepared his athletes. They were always ready to go. And in what Lloyd said, and what is true, what did he do? He worked with them. He knew you had to work hard, but he was good at talking to his kids, kind of pulling them over when they needed that extra bit of help, get them ready for the meets, which they were always prepared. I was fortunate to be a coach under him. He was my mentor. He loved Highland High School. He loved all of you, and I thank you. We're only scratching the surface of this. There's going to be so many more inducted to this Hall of Fame, and we now have a voice and a way to get there. Highland Hornets, I thank you so much.
Let's have one more hand for Coach Henry Sanchez. And before we introduce our next committee member, I was talking to Coach Sanchez last night, and we have unlocked 74 years of Highland history. He started mentioning some other guys to me, and it's just track guys, football guys. So we'll let you know how you can nominate Highland athletes after this is over, but there's a lot. Anybody that knows the Highland history knows there's a lot. So we think, again, our first class reflects pretty well on some of the history of the past. To introduce our next inductee, I would ask committee member Tim McCorkle to come to the podium. Tim?
person that I have the privilege of introducing into the Hall of Fame is Terry Tito Landrum. Terry can't be here. He's at a reunion for the Baltimore Orioles, the championship team that he was on. Terry Landrum was born in October 25th, 1954 in Joplin, Missouri. His father, Bobby, served in the Air Force. So Terry, basically, his family traveled all over the world. As a child, Landrum lived in Thailand, Japan, the Philippines, and other Air Force bases in the United States. After his father retired from the service, they settled in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Landrum's natural athletic ability became apparent when he attended Wilson Junior High in Albuquerque. At Highland High School, Landrum lettered in track, basketball, and football. Matter of fact, Highland won the 1970 and 71 state track championships and the 1972 state basketball championship, with Landrum as a standout member of those teams. When he graduated from Highland in 1972, Terry accepted a baseball scholarship to Eastern Oklahoma State Junior College. 6 years later, the stands were filled with baseball scouts watching his games. 5 different Major League Baseball teams offered Landrum a contract. Terry signed with the St. Louis Cardinals on October 10th, 1972, and was shipped to A-Ball in South Carolina, where his teammates from the Dominican Republic nicknamed him Tito. In 1975, Landrum won a Class A championship with St. Petersburg, the Cardinal farm team, and in 1980. Landrum was a member of the Class AAA Championship Springfield, Illinois Redbirds. He joined the Cardinals, the Major League team, on July 24th, 1980. Landrum's winning ways continued in the major leagues. In 1982, Landrum received his first World Series ring with the St. Louis Cardinals. His second ring would come the next year, when he was traded late in the season to the Baltimore Orioles. In the American League playoffs against the Chicago White Sox, Landrum hit a home run in the 10th inning that broke a 0-0 tie and put the Orioles in the 1983 World Series, which they won. It is said to be the third most important home run in Oriole history. After his lengthy winning streak, a saying emerged: where Tito goes, champagne flows. Landrum was traded back to the Cardinals as a utility player in 1984 and found himself in another World Series the following year. He scored the winning runs in Game 1 and Game 2, and he homered in the Game 4 victory. Despite Landrum's stellar performance, the Cardinals lost the '85 series to the Kansas City Royals. In 10 World Series games he played in his career, Landrum had a .360 batting average. Landrum was traded to the Dodgers in 1987 and ended his major league career with the Orioles in 1988. In his 10 major league seasons, he was an excellent outfielder with a .992 fielding average and only 5 errors in 634 chances. With baseball still in his blood, Landrum went on to play in the senior leagues in West Palm Beach Tropics in 1989 and 90. Ankle, knee, and back injuries he sustained throughout his career. His body had enough. In 1992, he moved to New York City when his wife, Carol Williams, took a job as a producer with ABC News. With his baseball career behind him, Landrum had to find something else to do. With deep admiration for the physical therapist who helped him heal over the years, he decided to give college another try. He received a partial scholarship from New York University, where he studied to become a physical therapist while acting as an assistant baseball coach for the university baseball team. In 2014, Landrum and his wife retired to California, where they spend time with family. Landrum has 2 daughters and 5 grandchildren. Whenever he can, Landrum heads to the golf course. It's great pleasure that I'm standing before you to induct Terry Landrum into the Highland Hall of Fame. We do have a video. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I was downstairs when I opened Good evening, everyone. I was downstairs when I opened my email telling me that I had been inducted into Highland High School's Sports Hall of Fame. I guess the noise that I made caused my wife to come downstairs to see if we had won the HGTV Dream Home. I told her we hadn't and explained my surprise. And what she said was priceless. T, that's awesome. My deepest thanks to all the committee members for this prestigious award. A shout out goes to those who contacted me, Ed Nunez, Marie Everett, and Tim McCorkle. Tim and I go way back. We played baseball together as kids. I was the pitcher and Tim was the catcher. Now, Tim likes to tell the story that no one else wanted to catch me because I threw the ball so hard. So Tim volunteered. He goes on to say that when he'd get home, he'd have to soak his sore glove hand. Truth is, he not only had to soak his hand, he had to deal with the bruises on his arms, his legs, from all the balls I bounced off of him. But you know, I gotta admit, I like Tim's story better. Now back then, my dad was in the Air Force. We moved every 2 years, Thailand, Japan, the Philippines, and several bases in the United States. Friends were a rarity for me. Just as friendships started to grow, I'd have to move again. I started to shut myself off from getting too close to anyone. When our family was stationed at Randolph Air Force Base in Texas, we took a trip to visit my uncle in Albuquerque. Dad was retiring soon, and Mom wanted to be close to her brother, so her and I convinced Dad to move here. As usual, I didn't know anyone when I attended Wilson Junior High, but since we were staying for a while, this felt like a fresh start for me. So I started to lower my guard a little, and I remember walking down the hall when I got a tap on my left shoulder. It was a teacher telling me to stop looking down at my feet and start looking people in the eye. I took her advice, and it allowed me to meet one of my 2 best friends in the world. He's an amazing man, and I'm sure if you know him, you'll certainly agree. You know the saying, I want to be like Mike? Well, I wanted to be like Phil Miranda. Phil's family quickly became my second family. Sitting with them at the dinner table was a total delight, the perfect example of family love. It was Phil's sister, Tina, who actually contacted Phil to tell me that a committee member was trying to get a hold of me. This was the first time that Tina will hear this. Tina, I had a crush on you. And I never told Phil either. The other friend who was influential in my life is Michael Lee. He was a year ahead of Phil and me, and I thought he was the smartest person in the world. Just being around Mike made me understand how important learning is. To this day, Michael Lee sends me words of encouragement and enlightenment. Big thanks to Michael and to Phil. Love you guys. Now, my development continued at Highland High. One afternoon, I was sitting in the gym and Coach Sanchez sat down next to me. He looked at me closely and said, "I know where you were last night." That froze me in my tracks, no pun intended. But you guys want to know where I was, don't you? Not going to tell you. Coach Sanchez had a gentle voice, and when he talked, you listened. He went on to ask if I was going to be a leader or a follower. He told me I had some talents, and if I worked hard to develop them, they could take me far. This was more than just encouragement to me. To me, this was someone who I admired, showing that he cared about me and my future. Thank you, Coach Sanchez, from the bottom of my heart. Now, there was another faculty member whose words of wisdom also touched me deeply, Miss Oltmans. Now, Miss Oltmans traveled with the cheerleading squad on our games away, and her smile was always contagious. I don't remember how it came about, but she taught me how to present myself to others so I could be a powerful representative for myself and for the school. She also insisted everyone treat her girls, and all women, with the respect they are due. She even taught me in taking her home economic class where I learned to bake, sew, and sew a tailor stitch. Things my wife will tell you I cannot do to this day. But treating women with respect, that stuck. Thank you, Miss Oltmans. Now, the hardest lesson I had to learn at Highland was the consequence of lying. I didn't play baseball at Highland because I ran track and both teams practiced at the same time. So as my new interest in baseball grew, I played on teams outside of school where scouts could see me and evaluate my performance. The summer actually before my senior year, I played with a team that was so good we were headed to the finals. That was at the exact time I was supposed to be in two-a-days for football. I lied to Coach Gentry and told him I was going to miss practice because I had to go to my grandmother's funeral. I had a good game and my name wound up in the newspaper. Turns out, Coach Gentry can read. He kicked me off the team for lying, a very difficult punishment that I definitely deserved. And I watched those senior year games from the stands. It took a long time before I could finally say, "Thank you, Coach Gentry." Now, the rest of my story is pretty much in my bio, but there's one question everyone asks, so let's answer it now. Where did Tito come from? In my first year of A-ball, my roommates were from Mexico, Venezuela, and Puerto Rico. They spoke very little English, and I spoke even less Spanish. But besides baseball, our mutual interest was music. The Jackson 5 was big back then, and they started calling me Tito, a more Hispanic-sounding name. It stuck throughout my entire baseball career. I remember sending my first clipping home to my mom, and she called me completely confused. "Who is this Tito, and where did he come from?" she asked. "Mom, that's my nickname." Before she died, she was very grateful that I was Terry again. All the lessons I learned at Highland High stayed with me and influenced my life. Thank you, Highland, for all these experiences, and thank you again for this incredible honor.
One more hand for Terry Landrum. I think one of the things about Terry Landrum, and talking to Terry, if you think about all the honors he's received, played for the Orioles, won a World Series, and when he found out he's in the Highland Hall of Fame, he goes down stairs and yells with glee. And you saw in his speech how humble he was and how Highland still means a lot to him. And I got to talk to him more than once, and it's been a lot of fun getting to know him. And for all the accolades he's had, he's a very humble guy. He really is. You know, we also wanted to mention some coaches that we see here today, and thank you for joining us. In the back, Coach Larry Waters used to coach soccer here. Thanks for being here, Coach. Coach Mark Henry, he's a state champion here at Highland. Coach Jim Ciccarello. Coach Judge Chavez, coached football here at Highland for 17 years. Former city councilor and former track star here at Highland, Brad Winter. Former Highland basketball coach Ray Rodriguez. And of course, a good friend of mine, former All-City basketball guard Joe Bradley in the back also. So thank you for joining us. We sure appreciate it. Our next inductee, we're almost there to the end. Again, thanks so much for joining us, is Jared Baxter. Jared graduated from Highland in 1997. Jared was an All-City, All-District, and All-State running back in 1996, an All-State wrestler in 1996 as well. UNM four-year letterman in football. He rushed for 2,102 yards while at UNM on 463 carries, an average of 4.5 per carry. Baxter was drafted by the Houston Texans in the 5th round of the 2002 NFL Draft by the Houston Texans, and played 3 years in the league, 2 with Houston and 1 with Arizona. Baxter is currently the offensive coordinator and offensive line coach at a high school at a high school in Sugar Land, Texas. He could not be with us, but will accept his induction into the Highland Sports Hall of Fame via video.
Jared Baxter here. I first want to say I'm honored to be here making this video. I couldn't be there in person, but I'm so glad I'm there in spirit with all the Hornets out there. I am amazed at the group of people that are part of this first class, and again, it's just a special thing being a part of it. And I just want to thank the Highland Sports Hall of Fame committee for adding me to such a highly esteemed group. Again, the list of names is amazing, along with their accomplishments. I want to give a big thank you to all my teachers and coaches that I had while I was at Highland High School. They were a big influence on my life now as a parent, as a coach, and a current teacher, as a Christian. They really impacted me, and I share those things now with my students and my kids at school. My brother and I are graduates of Highland High School, 96 for him, 97 for me. I'll treasure those relationships I built with teammates, with classmates, and most importantly with teachers and coaches. And again, those are a big influence on me today, and I'll always be a proud Hornet when I do get a chance to visit Albuquerque. I don't let anybody forget I'm a Highland Hornet. Again, Highland was a big influence on me, and you can see that currently in my approach to teaching, in my approach to coaching, and my approach to being a father. I believe that athletics, particularly in scholastic athletics, are a beautiful complement to academics. And when you put the two together, a good coach, a good team, a good program will enhance what's taught at home. It will reinforce the character traits that are desired from parents at home. That's a big deal. That's a big responsibility. It's more than most people know. It encourages competition. It encourages resiliency. If you do sports and coaching the right way, like it was done at Highland during my time there, then you can have a significant impact on teaching a kid how to bounce back from adversity. And my time at Highland was packed with adversity, particularly physically, with all the broken bones and all the injuries, and all of the support from teachers and coaches and recovering each time. I've always had great teachers through elementary school and middle school, my time at Kirtland and Wilson, but at Highland in particular, I can just list all the teachers that had a big influence on me. And most of these things were outside of sports. They were outside of the field. It was those coaches taking time to get to know me personally, push me, make sure there are consequences when I got a little out of bounds, make sure there was encouragement. And that's how you show love to students. And I always got that from teachers. My science teachers, Miss Wiest, Miss Held, I can go on, coaches, Coach Luther, Coach Chavez, Coach Sanchez, Coach Battles. You know, all these conversations I had with these, Coach Hardle in English class and wrestling. You know, all of these conversations were before practice, during practice, on trips, in between class, staying back for just a few minutes to myself get to know teachers and then get to know me. And there was always a appropriate personal relationship that was used to push me, make connections, and help us grow as students and as athletes. Athletically, you know, my time at Highland was filled with recovery from injury. My freshman year, game 4, maybe 6 during the season, broke my wrist and found that out second quarter and hit it behind a pad for the rest of the game and finished that game knowing that it was my last game that season. More than likely, you know, it's not about me per se or glorifying me in that regard when we tell those stories, when Coach Chavez tell those stories to future teams, or I share that story with my kids that I coach here in the Houston area. It's about teamwork and sacrificing yourself for the benefit of the team, of others, and being dependent upon others and not wanting to let others down, along with your own goals, you know, mixing the two. You know, I learned that during that time. Moving on to my sophomore year, you know, I broke my leg over the summer on the way, in the summer on the way to the fall of my 10th grade year. So I missed football then. Again, more time for growth. That's what that is. I did get to wrestle that year, had a great year wrestling freshman year coming into it. But my sophomore year, I learned about commitment and hard work. And as part of that, you know, I think my record was abysmal, but I hadn't really learned to grind at that time, you know. And, you know, Coach Harden was a big influence on me at that time because we got to travel wrestling during the summer and a lot of time on the bus. And to talk to him about some issues I had heard at Denny's with some discrimination and things like that, and him taking the time to pull me aside and help me think about what that means, what my parents have taught me, of how people treat me, how I treat them, things in my control and out. You know, that's him investing in me as a person. You know, I completely outside of worrying about the next match, going through finishing the 10th grade track season and healthy finally, and again, continue to be coached under Coach Sanchez during that time. Moving into my junior year, finally having a full season without injury, my only one in high school. You know, learned a lot. That's a big time of growth from 10th to 11th grade for most kids. I find out now, looking back, and my relationship with those coaches increased during that time. And again, now we're continue to talk more about life, more about outside of sports. And again, you're a young man and you have different decisions to make when you're 16, 17. And, you know, those are the kinds of influences they had. Again, you talk about commitment, character, resiliency, toughness in the right way. When you do those things in the right way and have great relationships with kids and they see you appropriately, rightly as a model of those good character traits, then again, you can pass those things on to your children in your professional career, to your teammates, co-workers. Those things are built in high school while you're trying to figure things out as a young man or as a young woman. And again, great coaches, great teachers at Highland that I had were a big influence on me, and I was able to take those things forward and pass those things on. my senior year, obviously I broke another leg. I broke the other leg, broke the right leg, tibia and fibula. We're looking as a football team to win a state championship, quite frankly, with all the players on our team, obviously with Bobby and our guys up front, Jerry and Brian, and all of my teammates that I still have relationships with now. We were looking to do big things, and we went undefeated, and snap, suddenly that leg is broken. Game 8, I believe. There were a lot of tears on the field that day, but it wasn't from the pain of the leg. It was from missing out on what my teammates were going to experience. Going through this again, going through recovery again, that disappointment. But again, I talk about resiliency, and I feel like the coaches I had, the atmosphere that was developed, the culture at Highland High School was all about toughness, resiliency, persistence, perseverance. Those are all words that describe my experience at Highland High School and what we were all about. So obviously I went on to recover from those things with 5 a.m. workouts in the pool with Coach Sanchez, getting me up, pushing me, prodding me, all the encouragement from teachers like Ms. Green, Ms. Klein, Mr. Stucker. The list goes on. Coach Luther, one of our baseball coaches I had many, many conversations with about life. And I told him I'd never be a teacher and a coach. And here I am, 14 years a teacher and a coach. Because of my time at Highland, I was able to go on through the broken leg, walk on at UNM, earn a scholarship in '98, that spring, go on to be two-time elected captain, two-time offensive MVP, those type things. A draft pick in the 5th round to the Texans here in Houston. So all of those things stem from my time at Highland High School, and I'll never forget that. And I'll never stop saying it. So thank you again to everyone involved on the committee. Thank you again for those that had an impact on my life, and go Hornets.
One more coach I forgot to acknowledge, and I apologize. Coach Phil Lovato, Highland football coach, come out and support his Hornets this year. He's got a lot of his football guys right over here. So, Coach, good luck to you this season. Come out and support the Hornets. Our last, and certainly not least, inductee of the Highland Sports Hall of Fame class of 2023 is Bobby Newcomb. Bobby graduated from Highland in 1997. In football, he was the 2-time Albuquerque Tribune Player of the Year, 2-time first-team All-City and All-State, Parade All-American, and also the Gatorade Player of the Year, Super Prep Magazine's Regional Offensive Player of the Year. In basketball, he was the Albuquerque Tribune Player of the Year, first-team All-City and All-State, and the Gatorade Player of the Year. In track, he's a 2-time Athlete of the Year, 2-time champion in the 200-meter dash and 1600 relay, 2-time High Point Man of the state track meet. He won the 100, 200, 400, and long jump at the 1997 state track meet. He went to Nebraska and played quarterback for the Cornhuskers and led Nebraska to a 9-4 record in 1998 and a number 19 ranking nationally. He played football professionally in the Canadian Football League for the Montreal Alouettes. He was drafted by the Arizona Cardinals in the 2001 NFL Draft. He was also a second-team All-Big 12 selection in 1999. Bobby is currently the head football coach at Castile High School in Arizona and was unable to attend today, but will accept his induction into the Highland Sports Hall of Fame via video.
Hello, fellow Highland Hornets. I am honored to be selected as a Highland Hall of Fame member, alongside such amazing people and competitors of our past. I grew up only a couple blocks from Highland, and I've been a deeply rooted Highland Hornet since I was in elementary school. I played Highland Pee Wee football for several years in youth. All my family always supported Highland. My 2 younger brothers and my sister graduated from Highland as well. I took all my experiences and Highland roots to University of Nebraska, then to the National Football League as a draft pick in 2001, then to the Canadian Football League. I continued to expand many of those academic and professional roots to a Fortune 500 company as a director, earning 5 more college degrees as well, including 2 bachelor's degrees, 2 master's, and a doctorate of management and organizational leadership. Then I decided to plug into a local high school to help transform and develop young people as a head football coach here in Queen Creek, Arizona at Castillo High School. As a high school athlete, I was fortunate to have great coaches who enabled me to really blossom as an athlete in 3 different sports. I had great experiences competing in football, basketball, and track and field, being a Gatorade All-American and an All-State competitor in all 3 sports. I was also selected as the High School Athlete of the Year 2 years in a row in 1996 and 1997. After leaving high school, going to University of Nebraska, I was a starting wide receiver on the 1997 National Championship team, a season and also where I led the nation in punt returns as well. In the National Football League, I was fortunate to play for the Arizona Cardinals, the Baltimore Ravens, and the Indianapolis Colts. Then in Canada, I played for the Montreal Alouettes. The values of hard work, discipline, respect, faith have really been front and center in my life and have led me to the place I am now. My mother, John Day Sandee, and my father, Bob Newcomb, have been rocks and pillars for me growing up. Watching them and their habits and values have really influenced me throughout my entire life. I'm also grateful to have had phenomenal coaches, such as Coach Sanchez in track and field, where I set a few state records in the sprints and high pointed in a state track meet and won a region decathlon championship as well. My head coach, Judge Chavez, who coached me in football, really helped lay the foundation and confidence in playing, on the field. And Coach Harvey, who influenced me to continue playing basketball my senior year, and where I actually ended up becoming an all-state player and doing some fun things in basketball as well. I'm glad that he really talked me into doing that at the end. And my Pee Wee coach, Frank Cedillo, who was very influential in my development as a young player and inspiring me to play football, throughout my young life and also through high school as well. I remember all the things they used to say and all the things they used to do and all the values to teach and all the little sayings that they used to have, and all those little phrases have stuck with me all through my life. Some of them I can't repeat right now, but all of them were seeds that were planted inside of me that really helped me blossom at different stages of my life. Having men of value, and people of influence, people of value who truly and genuinely care about the individual athlete, about the individual person, more than just the sport they're coaching, has a major impact in each individual that they coach and influence and touch. And I'm just an example of that. I'm grateful for all my teammates that I had in all sports that I played, from Pee Wee to high school to college to the National Football League, to my coworkers and fellow coaching staff that I even have now. You learn something from everyone. Each person has an influence. Each person has a voice that helps guide you in some capacity. Highland meant the world to me. Highland was home. Highland was a foundation. Highland was a rock. Highland was a place that I would go even when school wasn't in session or practice wasn't in session. But it was a place of comfort. It was a place of joy. It was a place of happiness, a place of learning. And it was something that will always be close to my heart the rest of my life. I'm grateful for Highland High School and the people that invest in the school and the people who invested in me. I'm grateful for all the athletes I played with and competed with, even those I competed against. Grateful for the surrounding community, where we had people around our community as well that really supported the school, supported me, and through some of the challenges and all that I even had, even at the house across the street from Highland High School. And once again, I want to just say I'm so honored and grateful to be part of this Hall of Fame class. So thank you. Thank you for considering me. Thank you for having me a part of this special group.
Let's have one more hand for our inaugural class of 2023. Before I forget, I also want to acknowledge the Highland cheerleaders. Thank you for being here. Also want to thank the Highland High School. We mentioned Athletic Director John Barnhill. Thanks very much for all your help. David Montez with all our video assistants. Want to thank the Highland Alumni Board, the Highland Sports Hall of Fame Committee. We'll be sending out nominations via our Facebook page. There's a lot of athletes I'm sure people want to nominate, so look at our Facebook page or contact Marie Everett or Marie Smith Everett or myself. So again, we thank you for being here. There's one more person that I want to thank, and that's my wife, Dolores. I'll tell you, when it comes to script changes and wardrobe, she's on top of everything for me. She'll make me do it again when I think I've got it down. So she'll say one more time, so I got to give her a big shout out. Thanks so much for coming. Have a great, oh, one more thing. Everybody's invited to the Albuquerque Distillery on 500 Central for a after-hours event. And those people here that spoke, Lloyd McPeters and everybody else, I'm going to be interviewing you in the Alumni Association lounge upstairs. So if you wouldn't mind, just for a couple of minutes, we're going to do an interview afterward, and Coach Chavez, you too as well. So thank you and have a great afternoon.